Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet SkyFF, the world where everything revolves around £50,000. Well, for Suj at least, maybe not for the rest of us. Suj is away today. He's actually in Ireland. My name's James. You probably know that. I've got a guest with me today, one of our patrons. Delighted to introduce to you, Limichi Okamoto. How are you, Limichi?
Doing very well, James. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome, mate. Thank you for standing to Suj's shoes. I don't suppose you can be any worse. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please, mate, for those who don't know you.
Hi, so my name is Limichi. I'm from Hong Kong. Sort of played Sky for about 3 years now. Actually, 2 years, sorry, and taken it seriously for about a year and a half. Because Sky doesn't really record data, so based on my memory, sort of think of my best rank is around 2000, 3000-ish. I've played FPL for far longer, sort of fluctuate around 30k to about 150k-ish is sort of where I tend to finish. For my sins, I'm a Chelsea fan. I guess we have a lot to talk about there. Pretty disastrous performance last weekend. And interest-wise, I'm a PhD student and sort of my interests are on social media. So I do really enjoy sort of the dynamics around the Twitter community for both fantasy games and also, well, I study misinformation and things. So perhaps like 40 team news is always excites me. Yeah.
Nice one, mate. We'll just clarify for the listeners and the viewers as well that you do live in the UK.
Yes,
you're not playing illegally from the outside as well. And I understand as well, for the benefit of the audio listeners who can't see where you are, you live in a mansion, clearly, by looking at this wonderful setup in the background.
No, I do not. I live in a very, very small flat that happens to have construction noise. So I have moved to a far fancier location for this recording. Yeah.
Good job, mate. We very much appreciate it. How was your last game week in Sky and where are you at the moment, mate?
So I'm at 1,681 as my position. And for Suj's benefit, the score is 1,096 since he tends to ask. My points for this week is pretty disastrous at 52 points. I think Haaland being injured really cost me because I don't have much of the main alternative captaincies. So I don't have Salah, I don't have Cancelo, and I think people went for those other captaincies where they might have stayed with Haaland. So my captain was Virgil van Dijk, and that wasn't particularly great. Yeah.
Interesting. And Sunday, who did you captain?
Saliba for a pretty mediocre 7-pointer.
Yeah, mediocre. We can blame Arteta, can't we? Because he was certainly on for at least tier 1 passing with the clean sheets and was obviously taken off on, I think, 55 passes, I want to say. What did you say your rank was? 1,600 and something?
1,681.
Okay, I'm 2,167. So let's call it 500 places. I'm 9 points behind you, which gives you an indication that it's still really, really tight and around there. And I've obviously had quite a bit of a dip this last week with similar issues at the weekend. Certainly no Haaland didn't do me any favours. I captained Salah on Saturday, so that went pretty well for the 22, considering it was a disastrous result in the end for Liverpool. I captained Saliba on Sunday as well for the 14 points. There wasn't a lot else knocking about for myself. 9 points for Nick Pope, 10 points for Cancelo, 10 points for Gabriel Martinelli, 72 points for myself, which is obviously not great. Those who found better alternatives, and obviously it's interesting to obviously note that a lot of people sold Erling Haaland far more than I expected. Haaland's top 1,000 ownership is now down to 47.9%. I guess all those people are sold are obviously now sitting there hoping he's not available at the weekend and it's a masterstroke. Did you sell or have you still got?
I've still got him.
Yeah.
Primarily because I was out and about with no internet. But well, we'll hope that he plays against Fulham this weekend.
Yeah, I kept as well. I think for me, having had Salah in place and Cancelo, I'd have been getting in a player that I wasn't captaining.
Yeah.
And I think the one for me would have been Harry Kane. So I didn't think I could justify it on the free on not knowing the Haaland situation. It might be one game I'm not going to captain. I still would have picked Salah over Kane on Saturday. So yeah, I didn't make any moves. As I said, I've dipped outside the top 2,031 transfers left. Suj, because I know you're all dying to know, because he's the biggest threat to any of you for actually winning the money. I did message him just before we started recording. I said, anything you want to share for the podcast? He said, no, but when I win and buy a holiday home in Portugal, patrons will get a 10% discount when they hire it. He's then sent me a screenshot of his team with 22 points for Salah, obviously captain Saturday. I presume he obviously captain Jesus on Sunday, 22 points as well. Yeah, he's doing well. 10 for Cancelo, 10 for Trippier, and he's got little bits and sods for Rodri, João Paulinho, Van Dijk, and David Raya as well. So he's not done too badly this week, I don't think. He sold Haaland for Salah and then obviously captained him. I think in his case, with the amount of transfers he had left, and he's thinking he's getting the best captaincy, whereas I already felt like I had it. It was obviously more justifiable for him to make the move. He said, depending on team news, Rodri or Salah expendable to get Erling Haaland back. And he says, obviously, if Haaland is in the team, and we will know because there's no early kickoff this Saturday, so we will get to see all the 3 p.m. lineups. He also says Paulinho or Jesus to Rashford, possibly even an option as late as Sunday the 13th. But I think, Suj, if you're going to make that move, my friend, that would be this Sunday on the 6th. You should probably go ahead and make that move, at least get yourself the extra fixture. He says, obviously, if Jesus gets a yellow card this weekend, that would be nice. I don't know why that's so nice, because it just means that he won't be available the following Saturday. And if he did get booked, he'd still potentially be moving on. He's a strange one. I don't know how he's doing well, honestly. He said, other than that, sitting tight. His rank is 3.5K. He says he's exactly 100 points off the top 100. He has 43 transfers in hand and 2.7 million in the bank. He is going to beat all of you until he fucks it up himself, basically. Any plan moves for you? For what's left?
No, I actually made a move last weekend. I sold Jared Bowen and I brought in Marcus Rashford.
Nice.
Because I didn't have a captaincy for the 13th of November.
Yeah.
Because I sold Mitrovic, I think, a few weeks ago. So I don't think I'll make any moves. However, I do still have Haaland, Saka, and Christian Romero at the back. So there's a lot of flags, and I might be swayed to make moves if I'm very trigger happy.
Yeah, I think that there's one player who, if people have, they should probably definitely be making a move, I think, and that's if they've got Tony, who's obviously now suspended for the game at Nottingham Forest this weekend, and his only remaining game, therefore, will be Manchester City. So if you're getting in a captain option as well, I definitely feel like that's probably a transfer worth being made. Just note that Mitrovic is now on 4 yellows as well. So if you're thinking, oh, Tony Mitrovic, and that covers me Sunday the 13th, yeah, that might come back and bite a little bit. I wonder if people might go back for Brighton if they've got Tony and look at a Webster or a Dunk to potentially cover that last Sunday. And you've obviously got Wolves away this weekend. They're the lowest scorers in the league. So there's potential for points there, I think, still on Brighton players. Maybe people want to look at McAllister. Obviously, Hall's quite well often as well. Let me take you through some of the interesting talking points from the weekend games. Passing tiers for all of Manchester City's back 4 and Rodri all hit tier 2. Laporte and Akanji 96, Stones 83. Cancelo just got in tier 2 on 70. De Bruyne hit shot tier, obviously scored a fantastic goal. Wout Faes 44 passes. Despite them having limited amount of the ball, I've spoken about this a lot. Defenders are having decent passing numbers against Manchester City. 44 is more than I think we'd have expected in a fixture like that in the past. There were plenty of passing numbers also for Spurs players defensively at Bournemouth. Clement Longley, 92 passes, did play in the centre of the back 3 and also did at Marseille last night as well. But whether that sticks or not is probably quite dependent on Christian Romero's fitness. have the impression, by the way, if you own Romero, that he probably won't be back before the World Cup. Is generally what we think. Don't quote me on that. I think there's just a suspicion amongst the Tottenham community that we probably won't see him again until December. So he's another one people might want to consider moving on. Again, similar value to like Dunk Webster, if people want to consider that sort of move. Ben Davis and Davinson Sanchez both scraped in with 60 passes, respectively. As well, saying Sanchez got removed on 57 minutes. So he was going at a rate of more than a pass a minute when he was taken off. Travers played in goal for Bournemouth, and he's definitely a downgrade on Neto. And if you have got Bournemouth defensively, if you might have done that, obviously bearing in mind the Monday night game with West Ham, I'd be concerned about that. But I think with the fixtures, it's not worth moving on with Leeds and Everton to go. On Brentford and Wolves, just note Josh De Silva, 5 tackles. There was also tackles for Semedo and Podence. Diego Costa did hit shots here, but was also sent off. He's obviously suspended for Wolves' remaining games. Brighton Chelsea, Limichi, 7 saves for Robert Sanchez, 4 shots on target for Leandro Trossard. There wasn't anything else tiering-wise for Brighton, bar shots here for substituting Sensico as well. 3 shots on target in the final 25 minutes. For Chelsea, shots on target for Mount, Gallagher and Havertz. Saved here for Mendy, despite coming on at half-time. Do you want to enlighten us a little bit on what went wrong for Chelsea at the weekend?
Well, I think Potter got his tactics wrong is the first aspect. I think the second aspect is easier to talk about. I think Chelsea completely crumbled with the home atmosphere. I think after the first 10 minutes, the home crowd was absolutely roared up. Thiago Silva made a couple uncharacteristic errors. He's passed it straight to, I think, Mitoma. I think the left wing back and the right wing back, which were Pulisic and Sterling, were far too high. And also the Brighton's left mids and right mid, which was Mitoma and Solimarch, kept drawing in Chelsea's wide centre backs, which meant Estupiñán and March kept getting in behind the defense and just wreaked havoc. Yeah, I think Chalobah in particular was quite targeted, and Cucurella actually. I think Cucurella definitely struggled with the sort of the home atmosphere booing him. I think he really was not very settled and was taken off after 64 minutes. He was taken off previously against Aston Villa and Manchester United as well in Chelsea's fixtures, but we don't really have an alternative until Koulibaly comes back. So I think that's why he continues to play, but he's obviously being targeted by the opposing team. So I think Arsenal will have a lot of joy against him if he has to play, and I don't know whether Koulibaly will be back in time.
Obviously, on the other side of the Overhaul, you have Bournemouth at home, Manchester United host Nottingham Forest the same day. And you've also got a fixture on New Year's Day away to Nottingham Forest. The only other game's Tottenham against Aston Villa. So I don't think Chelsea will be essential, but there is a route I discussed last week where people are probably going to want at least one of Chelsea or Manchester United. A Tottenham asset looks like it's probably needed anyway. If you were going now, and I had to force you into picking a Chelsea player now on the other side of Overhaul, who would be your favourite for that?
I think if the goalkeeper position is clear, then it would be the goalkeeper, either Kepa or Mendy. I'm not sure about whether it will be clear because Kepa is injured and Mendy only has a few games to impress. And so Mendy's definitely going to the World Cup, while Kepa is sort of 50-50, I guess. The Spain squad's not really announced. But I think that is probably the best bet. Thiago Silva will start most games, but as usual with his age and fitness, he won't be nailed to start every game. I think the other centre-backs are really a toss in the air. Koulibaly, even when he was fit, was rotated for a couple games. Azpilicueta could rotate with Chalobah. There are no right backs, and there's no left back either. The midfielders are not very interesting, I think, fantasy-wise, with Kovacic, Loftus-Cheek, and Jorginho's on pens, but again, is rotated. Front three, score no goals. Sterling had no shots. Havertz is doing Havertz things and has really great touches and, obviously a fantastic player, but just doesn't really translate into goals. I think Gallagher could be interesting if he gets more minutes, but again, with Potter and the rotation, I think it's very hard to recommend a Chelsea player unless it's the goalkeeper.
Yeah, interestingly as well, I was just having a look at his starts, which have been obviously limited, but there's only one tackle tier occurrence, and he was racking them up, particularly at Palace last year. I think there's one for shot tiers as well. That's all there is. And admittedly, it's limited starts and data. I'm surprised you didn't mention Reece James. If he's back, that might be one, I guess, that's popular. 9.7 is that too expensive? Do you think?
I think it might be a bit expensive. I think he will be sort of eased in if he doesn't go to the World Cup. And if the fixtures are congested, I think Potter might rotate him because he's so important to Chelsea, as you can see when he's injured. Our obvious weaknesses are in the fullback areas and the defense now. I don't think he also gets a lot of other tiers beyond attacking returns in general. So I think there's far better options for his price.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think people, but based on what you said, and I think what other people know, I think when it comes around at the moment, it's difficult to know where to go on Chelsea. On Kepa, by the way, he's not definitely out of the Arsenal game. We know he won't play against Zagreb tonight, but maybe we'll get more words from Potter, obviously, before the weekend. There's every chance he might even be back. Apparently, it's not a serious issue. I guess if he was ruled out, do people make a move or not? I don't know. It's not going to be captaincy, is it? So it's just 2 games and it might only be 1 game value. I think arguably just suck it up, don't you? Maybe.
Yeah, I would. Unless I have the money to get to Edison. Because of Manchester City's very good 2 fixtures. I don't think any other team has really good 2 fixtures. Probably maybe David De Gea if you don't have a captaincy for the 13th of November. He's been doing quite well, and Manchester United have been protecting him very well. And of course, he doesn't make as many defensive mistakes playing out from the back, so he might be good.
Yeah, that's a decent shout. And where that benefits over, say, Sanchez as a comparable, maybe. Obviously, you can wait all the way for the Chelsea team news on Sunday. You'll see the Chelsea team. If he's not in it, yeah, De Gea is probably the one in that circumstance that I guess would be your solution. The only other team that plays on Sunday and the following Sunday is Aston Villa. And I don't think we could be certain if Emi Martinez will play. I imagine he probably will be available. Obviously, he took that heavy knock at Newcastle. I'm sure people would go De Gea over Martinez in that situation anyway. An interesting one for the Palace-Southampton game at the weekend. Palace had the better of the first half, which is unusual for them. Passing numbers low, but equal this time. Gay and Anderson both on 32. The imbalance actually came in Southampton's numbers. So they played a back 3. Liankal, 32 passes. Keletas Char, 40. Mohamed Salisu, 76. Absolutely massive. Essentially double his other 2 centre-backs. So Southampton obviously had a left-sided bias going on there. From Newcastle Villa, Joe Linton, Wilson, Almiron, all in shot tiers. Guimaraes just made it into passing tier 61, was removed at 83 minutes. There was tackle tiers for Luiz and Dendoncker. Obviously, Unai Emery is now Aston Villa manager, and difficult to say what we can expect from them in the last 2 games. Save tiers for both Leno and Pickford in the Fulham Everton encounter. 6 saves for Jordan Pickford. It was a shot tier for William. Mitrovic obviously got a yellow card. As I said, that now puts him on 4 yellow cards. From the Liverpool-Leeds game, nothing for Tyler Adams. 32 passes and 3 tackles at Anfield is not bad, actually, though. It was another tackle tier for Pascal Struijk. There were shot tiers for all of Liverpool's attacking 3. Was a save tier for Alisson. Obviously, Meslier made 9 saves in the game, but I think it was only really the one-on-one with Nunes in the second half, which was a save that you wouldn't expect him to make. Interesting on the passing numbers from Liverpool. Van Dijk, 65. Joe Gomez, 100. this is becoming a more common theme, actually, where we're seeing real bias to one particular centre-half, where I think teams are forcing teams to attack down one certain side in their build-up play. Robertson got passing tier 2, 73, Trent 53. So then that flips the other way. I don't know if Liverpool are cutting out Van Dijk on their passing channels between the back four, potentially. Thiago also hit passing tier. From the Sunday games, Nico Williams obviously benched for those still have 8 tackles for Serge Aurier. And when he was at Tottenham, he was a bit of a monster for actually getting in on tackles. And it might be one to look at when the single game days come around again. But I think most people just be thinking that skip Nottingham Forest. Shots here for Martinelli and Jesus. Saka owners can obviously consider themselves very unlucky. He too also has a chance of being back on Sunday, and you will see the team. Gabriel 62 passes, Saliba 55, but withdrawn on 76 minutes. Ben White also 65 passes. Thomas Partey 104. I think leans into obviously Arsenal having dominance well before their centre back lines and stuff. And Reece Nelson obviously came as a sub, hit shot tier. And finally, for Manchester United, West Ham, Thilo Kehrer hit tackle tier. They were passing tier for Lisandro Martinez just with 60, and so too Christian Eriksen also 60. It was a shot tier for Marcus Rashford. Bruno Fernandes 5 tackles, but is suspended for the trip to Aston Villa this week. Martinez, Limichi, feels like one that is potentially going to be really popular, I think, on the other side of Overhaul. They start with Forest at home, Wolves away, and Bournemouth at home. And I think it's every case to say 2 of them will be captaincies as well.
Yeah, I think so. Because of basically how Manchester United's defense is, they're playing much better. I think it's quite difficult to invest in Varane given his injuries.
Yeah.
So there's only one centre back that is sort of nailed or will play most games. I mean, Dalot has been very impressive. I think it's hard to invest now with 4 yellow cards and that, but I think he could be a very good alternative to.
He does
Martinez.
get tackle tiers as well, Dalot.
Yeah. I think Luke Shaw is a good option. I think he doesn't really get a lot of tiers, but he did get a lot of, I think, is it tier 2 passes against Tottenham, against Spurs?
Yes.
And he does whip in some great balls. So I think he probably has more assist goal threat than Lisandro Martinez. But yeah, I would definitely have a Manchester United defender in the overall squad.
Yeah, I think considering what you said about Chelsea earlier, it feels like an either or, and I think the favouritism right now would have to be with a United player.
100%.
It feels like, again, I think you've got 2 captaincies there, 3 great fixtures. The fixtures do then stiffen up a little bit, but you can move it on. That 3rd fixture, Bournemouth, I mean, arguably you could chain it on to Tottenham or something else, even back to another Manchester City player, if it becomes clearer that one of the centre-halves is going to play more regularly, like Akanji or Aki, for example, as they play Chelsea on Thursday, the 5th of January. What's your plan for captaincy on Saturday then, mate?
So I have 3 players, Haaland, Foden, and David Raya. I think, fingers crossed, praying to the fantasy gods that Foden is starting. And if he is starting, then he's going to be the captain. If he doesn't, I might still put it on Raya, given it's against Nottingham Forest, but it is away, and Brentford are terrible away from home. So I think it really depends on Haaland, whether he's out for 2 games or just 1. If news comes out that he'll probably not make Brentford as well, then I'll probably make the transfer. If not, I might just go with David Raya and pray that Brentford do turn up.
Yeah, I think my backup plan, similar to yours, I've got Foden and Cancelo. So I think my choice would still be Manchester City. I think the only way I could see me making a transfer is, I think, like, if I can't go to De Bruyne because I'm in a 3-5-2 at the moment. That's the obvious one. Obviously, you could consider Julian Alvarez, but if I get him in, I'm not captaining him over Foden or Cancelo, I don't think. So I think it'd have to be that I'd need some confirmation that he's going to be out for the 2 weeks. Because if he's back for Brentford, I'm captaining him. So that's the 12:30 kickoff as well. So I see no reason to transfer him out and transfer him in for the 2 transfers. I just couldn't justify it. So I think the only one I'm thinking about maybe at the moment is actually arguably maybe Callum Wilson. And the reason for that is captaincy Sundays he's awkward. So if I am going to make the move, if it looks clear that Haaland's out, I think I either do nothing and just go, fine, nothing's worth a transfer, or do I decide if this gives me the best captaincy option on Sunday to do it? And we've been building to this Sunday for a number of weeks because captaincy is absolutely wide open on Sunday, isn't it? What's your plan currently?
So I have it bust on Kane because Spurs are at home. Liverpool look very inconsistent, is probably the most polite way of saying it. I do have Rashford as a backup. I think they probably do well against Aston Villa. It's away from home. I think Rashford had
first game with Emery as well, so it makes it really unpredictable.
Yeah, but I think he did look very good last week, even with Ronaldo. So I probably have more confidence in that. If not, I would go with Martinelli against Chelsea. I think their wingers could really target our fullback areas, as I said, and the sort of wide centre backs. So I don't think I would need to make a transfer for the captaincy on Sunday. If Haaland was out for 2 game weeks, I can move him to De Bruyne. So I probably might do that. I think he was very impressive against Leicester. I wouldn't go for Alvarez. I think he had no shots at all. I think against Leicester, I wasn't particularly impressed with his performance.
He did have one where he went through, but it was flagged offside. But actually on the replay, it was very close. So it's one that's kind of missing from the statistics, really.
Yeah, that's true. But again, I think if Haaland was back the other week, you would feel pretty much like you wasted a transfer bringing Alvarez in, while De Bruyne would be I think he could go against Haaland if you kept him against Brentford and Haaland starts.
I think for Saturday, if I could get to De Bruyne, if I knew Haaland wasn't going to play for the 2 games, I'd consider it. But I also think, as I've got other good Man City assets in Foden and Cancelo, I'd be a bit loath to. It's sod's law, isn't it? If I move the captaincy from one end to De Bruyne, it's one of the other two is going to go off big. It's almost inevitability. I think because of the opponent, I might just favour Foden over Cancelo for this particular weekend. As I said, I can't see me making a transfer Saturday if Haaland is definitely ruled out. Sunday, captaincy, currently I'm on Salah. And I think Son's injury last night, and we don't have prognosis, but I think there's every possibility he might miss the World Cup, actually, because there is some suspicion that it could even be a broken cheekbone, which would be horrendous. He'd struggle to be back for December, if that's the case, by the way. He could be out sort of February or so. So fingers crossed for him. But I think that takes away a big weapon that would have obviously given Liverpool massive problems. And Tottenham are certainly allowing a lot of shots on goal at the moment. So actually, I'd probably favour Mo. But I think there are lots of alternatives. I think Bowen or Schumacher, for people who may have still from obviously the Bournemouth fixture, home to Palace is reasonable. You've mentioned the likes of Rashford. I think you could even bring Martinez into that conversation. I think, yes, the likes of Martinelli, Jesus, even at Chelsea is okay at the weekend. Harry Kane's fine. And a lot of people have Kieran Trippier as well, away to Southampton. I wonder if the closer it gets, people just go, they're in great form. And actually, Southampton may get themselves into a position where they do end up quite deep. If you look at Newcastle's passing numbers for the back 4, they're slowly on the increase. Trippier's getting closer and closer to passing tiers. And I think it's because they're dominating games more. And also teams are beginning to give them a lot more respect because of their quality. So I don't mind Trippier as a shout for the weekend, even if people don't feel comfortable with any of them attacking options.
Yeah, I like Trippier as an option. I think set pieces. He had a couple of very good crosses against Aston Villa that I think a couple that Wilson could have put in. I do know St. Maximan is coming back, so I don't know how that changes the dynamic of the Newcastle team, whether it sort of shifts their players around. Probably won't affect Trippier much, so I think he is a very good captaincy option. But yeah, probably worth noting for other Newcastle players. Yeah,
Joe Linton's suspended for that fixture, so it could be that St. Maximin comes straight back in. I suspect that because it's only 2 games for the tournament, or the overhaul, if you will, that they'll probably just leave him as an impact sub and make sure he's right and ready to go in December. I think might be the strategy. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacob Murphy played. As said, Wilson's the one where I might look at it and think, yeah, okay, this is worth it for the 2 transfers. Another option I could have is obviously if Mitrovic gets the 5th booking at Man City at the weekend, I'm then missing him for the United game. Now I've got cover for that day in Adam Webster of Brighton, who are probably, the way United are beginning to defend, would probably favour at home to Villa rather than Mitrovic for the captaincy on that last day. So I could take a second look at Newcastle. It could be that I end up finishing this little period with no striker because I've got Haaland and Mitrovic, and I might just let it both go and go, fuck it, I'm nine players, because you really need the returns instantly at this stage for it to be worth it. And I think I only do it if I buy Wilson Sunday, I buy him and I captain him. I think as an example, if I went Trippier. I've also got Nick Pope, might even be an option, but at the moment I've got it bust on Mo Salah for the weekend. For those who don't own Haaland, Limichi, if he is in the team Saturday, what do you advise?
Captaining.
Just getting back. Is he definitely worth the transfer to get back in, do you think?
I think so. I think if he's fit for Fulham, then he's hopefully fit for Brentford. That's 2 games that you probably captain him in. He'll, I guess, most likely pick up where he left off, given that he was very well rested. And I think Man City would only play him if they're confident that in his fitness and there won't be any injury niggles, because there's very little risk, I think, in having to risk him against these 2 teams. So I think I would bring him back if I didn't have him and he starts against Fulham.
Yeah, I think, look, if you get him back in, you almost definitely probably captain him for the 2 games. His home record is astonishing. You're going to be fingers through your eyes for those 2 games. I mean, the way he's been going, they could be back-to-back hat-tricks again, couldn't they? And you're going to be effective 4v2, the most threatening player in the league, with the captaincy is involved over someone, I should imagine. So I think it's a rare one. We don't normally advise it in Sky, but I think if you have sold, you might have to suck it up and get him back. I think I would. I don't think I could watch the game knowing what you could do to those 2 teams defensively, they don't travel well either. You don't see Fulham or Brentford making it overly difficult. You already mentioned Brentford away records are not great. And what they conceded 9 in the last 2 away games, Brentford at the end. So yeah, I think if I didn't own Haaland, if he's in the team, we're getting him back. Obviously, for those who've sold, you're obviously hoping that he's not and you don't do anything, I guess. Before we finish up, my friend, let's take you through a few Sky questions. Mark Dorney says, would you get rid of Haaland if he doesn't start this weekend and bring in KDB?
Only if he's confirmed or most likely out for 2 game weeks. I think if it's just 1, I wouldn't use the transfer.
Yeah, I think there's that. I think there is a chance, though, that people are going into this weekend. Someone listening will be in this situation where they've only got Man City players this weekend. So I think the way the fixtures have mapped out, there's every chance that no one has, say, a Brighton asset at Wolves, or obviously Tony's now suspended. So unless you've got David Raya, you've probably got nothing from that fixture. Leeds, Bournemouth, there won't be a lot of coverage. Everton, Leicester, there's every chance people probably come off Maddison, I'm imagining, after that 5th yellow a couple of weeks ago. So there's every chance that someone might be sitting there now and only have Haaland going into that week, into the Saturday. Then what do you do? Do you sell Haaland knowing that he could be back for Brentford, or do you move something else?
That is a dilemma. I think it also depends on your transfer count, I think. But on this instance, a very plumb home fixture against Man City, I might move it if you don't have a good alternative, I think, because they could score quite a lot of goals against Fulham or any team when they're at home.
Yeah, I think that you've got the benefit of the team. I think if I was a Haaland owner in that situation and I didn't know that he was going to definitely miss Brentford, for example, I think my take on it would be I'd sell the weakest player that I have in the rest of my team for a Manchester City player. Bear in mind, you can see the team, and captain that player. That, because the chances are you've probably got someone in your team you don't want anymore, I'm going to guess. So that would be the way I'd treat that. Adi Tor says, with Son injury, is it worth removing him if he is out for the next 2?
Well, from what you tell me, it seems like he's going to be out
I'd be
for
very
definitely the next
surprised if he's
two.
available. I wouldn't say it depends, right? Because if he hasn't broken anything, and if they deem it as concussion, then he misses Liverpool, and if he's escaped bone damage, then obviously he could be back for Leeds, and it's a decent fixture, and therefore you probably wouldn't. I imagine we'll get a prognosis on Sonny, partly as well. Obviously, I know that South Korea were in touch with Tottenham last night, going, what's happened to our best player? So I don't think he's not one where you're not going to get the information. I'm pretty sure you will get the information. I think, again, if he's out for 2, if you're buying something that is going to get you a captaincy, so effective, say 3 for 0, then I think, yeah, make the move. If you're getting something in that's not for captaincy, I think it's borderline whether you bother or not, would be my take.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what I have with Christian Romero, that I think even if he's out for the 2 games, I don't really see a defensive asset that's worth making the transfer, because it has to be a defender given the formation I'm playing. So if I move him out, I don't really see anything that's worth the transfer. I don't think I'll be captaining any defenders for the rest of the weeks until Overhaul.
Yeah. I'm going to adapt Big Geek's question, but thank you for it. He just asked about 5th yellow cards. I think for players like, say, if Mitrovic gets booked on Saturday, I think it's the same thing. Like, if I'm bringing Wilson in and captain him, then it's effective. 3 for 0 feels worth it. 2, I'm not sure if it's without a captain. I'm not sure if it's worth it. But he does also ask, Harry Kane's on 4 yellows now as well. If he got booked against Liverpool, would you consider KDB or Haaland, say, if you don't have, for the 1 game the following week against Brentford, say if Haaland's not back for Fulham, people don't own, they've got Kane, he gets booked, and then Haaland's back in the team for Brentford, do you make that move for the 1 game and the 1 captaincy?
Probably not, in my opinion, given that there are good alternatives on the day, in particular with Liverpool. So if you do have a Salah, maybe a Van Dijk, even though he's been pretty disappointing, I would take the chance on it, given it's just 1 captaincy. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that as well. I think if you skip and he's back in for Brentford, you just got to get on with it, I think. Because there are Salah at home, Southampton, for example, even Van Dijk, that fixture would be decent alternatives. I think to make the transfer worthwhile at that point, Haaland would have to score twice as a minimum to make it worthwhile. So it's probably a no.
And Arsenal are away at Wolves that day, and I think that's a good fixture for them as well. So if you have any Arsenal assets, that could be a backup captaincy.
Yeah, sure.
We don't have Haaland.
Dark Invader SkyFF says, feels like having Van Dijk these days is pointless. Laporte's better value over the season this year. Question, just because City will keep more clean sheets and Liverpool are in disarray. I think this is a prime one where you don't bother moving it at this stage, do you? No. And it's a conversation for obviously the overhaul period. The thing is, Van Dijk will play every game and Laporte won't. It's messy with these Man City centre-backs at the moment. We're seeing it. Akanji almost looks like the one at the moment.
Yeah,
but I think that could change quickly.
If I went for a cheaper Man City defender than Cancelo, it would only be Akanji, because at least with the price difference, you're taking that risk, and you know that you're saving a lot of money over someone like Diaz, who's 10.6 and Laporte's 9 something. So you're not really saving that much monch
Limichi's just lost his light. It's risk. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Are you in the pitch black, mate?
Give me 1 second.
He's going to go and put his light on, which is the things that happen when shit's live or not live. Right, let's do a couple last questions. Michael Haaland says, post World Cup, what are the best 3 teams to target for fixtures and best value players from those teams?
We mentioned Manchester United.
Yeah, I think they're one.
I think Marcus Rashford looks like a good asset so far. He's managing shot tiers. He's occasionally playing striker. Of course, that depends on Ronaldo's behavior week on week, whether he's leaving early or doing anything scandalous. I think Casemiro is a good option. Bruno Fernandes, if you can afford it, I think he's shown flashes of his old self. And if Ronaldo is not playing, he's on penalties. So I think there are a lot of good options at United. I'm not sure what other teams you would target. What do you think?
It's probably at this stage, because we've only got the first three. We should get the two remaining January weekend fixtures for TV pretty much at any point, and we might have a single game day there where suddenly, we're looking at West Ham more, for example. I don't know. It's probably easier at the moment to say from the big six what you can do without. So I think, as we've said, if you're going United, you can do without Chelsea, basically, as long as you're also going Tottenham. And the other one from the big six, arguably, that you could do without is Arsenal, actually, who have a tough run of fixtures. They've got West Ham at home, Brighton away, Newcastle at home. I think alternative captaincies on those days Arsenal were playing is other teams from the big six, so that's not a problem. And also, when we can't see yet, is Tottenham, which we've said is highly likely to be 12:30 on the Saturday on the 14th of January, which is the first week that we can't see yet. So arguably, you could do without them, but Saliba, Jesus, Martinelli, all great prices, aren't they? It'd be difficult to completely ignore them. So Saliba will be a difficult one not to pick up. He's the kind of one I think you just leave him all season now. Is how it's beginning to feel with him. But they are the one that you could arguably do without. Southampton have a really good run of fixtures. So look, could Ward-Prowse perhaps find some form? He's not really shown it this season. Other than that, it's difficult to say without seeing what's ahead for the single game days. I think the likes of Mitrovic, Palace, Southampton, Leicester is a good run. Obviously, Paulinho. So they'll appeal. Palace have Fulham, Bournemouth, but then it's Tottenham. I think most people are probably sick of Wilfried Zaha if they do own. So I think it's still more from 5 of the big 6, and probably remove Chelsea currently, unless you want to go for Kepa, for example, if it's clear he's going to play. Then I think there's enough cheaper assets from those teams, you can nearly fill it. It's going to be really dependent what the TV fixtures are afterwards in January.
Yeah.
And finally, also Recluse says, assuming you will be playing it, any early thoughts on how you will look to approach playing the World Cup version of Sky Fantasy, which we think's coming, but I'm not actually going to trust them until I physically see a game in front of me. But any early thoughts on that, mate?
Well, I think they're going to wait until the sort of final squads are put in order to release the game. I'm not sure how excited we are to research Qatar and Ecuador players on the first day, and having to move them out very soon.
Listen, it's Ecuador goalkeeper, isn't it? It's got to be safe to travel. Just get the Ecuador goalkeeper.
I mean, Qatar are the reigning Asian champions, so don't write them off. I think.
Okay, get the Qatar goalkeeper then.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be fun. You can captain Harry Kane against Iran. When we're in England, it'll add a little spicy element to watching the game as well. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, we can't really. We have no idea in terms of transfer numbers or anything if the game's happening. So to give how we would play, I have no idea. It'd be 10, 20. I have no idea what they'll do with it, right? So I'd think it would be high priority to make sure you got the best captain every day near enough. It really will be a massive focus on captaincy in terms of playing that game, which might not be easy. You think, oh yeah, I'll have all these players, but it depends how many transfers. If you give 50 transfers, you literally just get the best captain every day, don't you? And diversify at the end would be my guess. I'm sure it won't be that. But yeah, looking forward to it. And obviously, if the game does happen, it looks like it, then we'll be playing. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it's a sign that the game will obviously hopefully continue into obviously next season as well. We'd certainly hope so, because we love playing the game. Limichi, thank you so much for your time, mate. Where can everyone follow you on the Bird app?
My Twitter handle is @Limichi_O. Not much football content. It's mainly academic stuff. So if you're interested in that area, then please feel free to follow. Yeah.
Good luck, mate. Thank you so much for standing in. Do you want to do a patron sales pitch? Because Suj normally does it. And as you are one.
Join Patreon. It's great.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, as noted on obviously other content, December is free. So if you do sign up now, you've got 2 months for free, and everyone's getting bumped up a tier not 2 months for free. Buy one, get one free, I should say. And January, everybody's getting bumped up a tier as well. So that you can pay £6 over the next 3 months, gets you into Slack and the SkyFF community now, gets you access to my planner, which may be important for many of you come December and obviously the restart. And in January, you'll have access to all the podcasts as well. So if you want to support us on Patreon, that's what keeps the lights on, is what Suj would say. www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Tomorrow's Clash of the Correspondents is Everton versus Leicester City with Sean Norton, Aaron Lager. If you're on Patreon, you can listen to that now because it's already released there. But just leaves me to say thanks again to Limichi. Good luck to the weekend. As always, guys, play it your way. Cue music, please. Match up.